Today we are going to understand something about the Central Finance Commission. The objectives of this session are to understand the role of Finance Commission in center-state relations, to know the recommendations of the Finance Commissions, to understand the relationship between the Planning Commission and Finance Commission. Finance is the main source of administrative structure. The 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution is related to the distribution of the financial resources between the union and the state governments. In order to decide proper ratio for distribution of those resources between the union and the state governments, the President of India shall appoint a Finance Commission. India is a union of states. The Constitution provides for the union government at the center and state governments at the periphery. The unity of Indian Union is based on sound center and state relations. This can be achieved by proper allocation of financial resources between the central government and the state governments. In this lesson, let us discuss about the structure and the functions of the Finance Commission. In the Constitution of India, the allocation of financial resources is favorable to the union government. The states have meager sources of financial resources. The Constitution made a provision for establishing the Finance Commission to distribute the financial resources between the union and the state governments from time to time. The President of India shall appoint a Finance Commission once in every 5 years under Article 280 of the Constitution. Composition. The Finance Commission consists of a chairman and 4 other members to be appointed by the President. They hold office for such period as specified by the President in his order. They are eligible for reappointment. The Constitution authorizes the Parliament to determine the qualifications of members of the Commission and the manner in which they should be selected. Accordingly, the Parliament enacted the Finance Commission Act of 1951, specifying the qualifications of the chairman and members of the commission. The chairman should be a person having experience in public affairs, and the 4 other members should be selected from amongst the following: 1. A judge of High Court or one qualified to be appointed as one. 2. A person who has specialized knowledge of finance and accounts of the government. 3. A person who has wide experience in financial matters and in administration. 4. A person who has special knowledge of economics. The Finance Commission is required to make recommendations to the President of India on the following matters according to Article 280. The first one is the distribution of the net proceeds of taxes to be shared between the center and the states, and the allocation between the states, the respective shares of such proceeds. 2. The principles which should govern the grants in aid to the states by the center, that is out of Consolidated Fund of India. 3. The measures needed to augment the Consolidated Fund of a state to supplement the resources of the panchayats and the municipalities in the state on the basis of recommendations made by the State Finance Commission. 4. Any other matter referred to it by the President in the interests of sound finance. In 1960, the Commission also suggested the grants to be given to the states of Assam, Bihar, Orissa and West Bengal in lieu of the assignment of any share of the net proceeds in each year of export duty on jute and jute products. These grants were to be given for a temporary period of 10 years from the commencement of the Constitution according to Article 273. The Commission submits its report to the President. He lays it before the Houses of Parliament along with an explanatory memorandum as to the action taken on its recommendation. Advisory role. It must be clarified here that the recommendations made by the Finance Commission are only of advisory nature and hence not binding on the government. It is up to the union government to implement its recommendations on granting money to the states or not. To put it in the words of D.D. Basu, it is nowhere laid down in the constitution that the recommendations of the commission shall be binding upon the government of India, or that it would give rise to a legal right in favor of the beneficiary states to receive the money recommended to be offered to them by the commission. Tax distribution system. The union government is authorized to impose and collect 5 kinds of taxes, namely customs, corporation tax, taxes on capital value of assets of individuals and companies, surcharge on income tax, fees earned through the matters included in the union list. The state governments are authorized to impose and collect 11 kinds of taxes, namely land revenue, stamp duty except on documents included in the union list, succession duty, estate duty, income tax on agricultural land, taxes on lands and buildings, sales tax, taxes on animals, taxes on transport vehicles, taxes on advertisements, taxes on consumption of electricity. Certain duties are levied by the union, but they are collected and appropriated by the states. For example, stamp duty, excise duty on medicinal and toilet materials. Some duties and taxes are levied and collected by the union government, but the proceeds are assigned to the states as per the principles laid down by the parliament. These include estate duty in respect of property other than agriculture, taxes on goods or passengers carried by railway, sea or air, taxes on railway fares and freights, etc. Some taxes are levied and collected by the union government. The proceeds obtained are distributed between the union and the states. For example, taxes on income other than agricultural income. In order to meet the purposes of the union government, the parliament can increase any of the taxes or duties by imposing surcharge. The union government imposes and collects certain duties other than those on medicinal and toilet preparations. It distributes the whole or any part of such net proceeds between the union and the states as determined by an enactment of the parliament. The states of Assam, Bihar, Orissa and West Bengal receive annual grants out of the Consolidated Fund of India in lieu of the export duty on jute and jute products. Bills concerning the tax or duty of states, agricultural income, surcharge or proceeds accruing to the states, etc., shall be introduced in Parliament with the prior recommendation of the President. The union government sanctions grants in aid to the needy states as per the Acts of Parliament. The main recommendations of the various commissions are given below. The first Finance Commission, which was constituted in 1941 under the chairmanship of Sri K.C. Niyogi, determined some fundamental principles to estimate the financial needs of the states. In the collection of income tax, 55% should be distributed among the states. The share of income tax which is given to the state should be distributed 80% on the basis of population. In the net collection of excise duties on 3 commodities, state should be given number 1 share. Moreover, the union government has to allocate grants in aid to the states. The second Finance Commission, which was constituted in the year 1956 under the chairmanship of Sri K. Santanam, recommended the share of income tax which gives to the states should be distributed 90% of the base of population. The state's share in excise duty imposed on commodities has been increased from 3 to many. For the developmental activities of the state, union government has to give liberal grants in aid. The third Financial Commission, which was constituted in 1960 under the chairmanship of Sri A.K. Chanda, recommended the distribution of 80% of the income tax among the states basing on the population. States' share in the central excise is reduced to 20%. The Fourth Finance Commission, which was constituted in 1965 under the chairmanship of Sri P.V. Rajmannar, has not recommended any changes in the share of the states or income tax. States' share on excise duty is increased. The Fifth Finance Commission, which was constituted in 1968 under the chairmanship of Sri Mahavir Tyagi, has not recommended any substantial changes in the distribution of income tax and central excise tax to the states. But the Commission recommended the substantial increase to the states in the allocation of grants in aid. The Sixth Finance Commission, which was constituted in 1972 under the chairmanship of Sri K. Brahmananda Reddy, recommended the increase of the state's share to 50% and their share should be distributed 90% basing on the population and the remaining on the backwardness. The Seventh Finance Commission, which was constituted in 1977 under the chairmanship of Sri J. M. Shelat, recommended the enhancement of the share of states in income tax from 80 to 85%, and the state share in excise duty was increased to 40%. The Commission also recommended liberal aid to the states from the union government in case of natural calamities, and also recommended liberal grant in aids and loans to the backward states. The Eighth Finance Commission, which was constituted in 1982 under the chairmanship of Sri Y.B. Chavan, also recommended more or less the same as the Seventh Finance Commission. The Ninth Finance Commission, constituted in 1987 under the chairmanship of Sri N.K.P. Salve, made the following recommendations. The 10th Finance Commission in 1992 under the chairmanship of Sri K.C. Pant made the following recommendations. It recommended to distribute 77.5% to the states from the central government's net income tax. It also recommended to give the 40% share to states from the net excise duty. It recommended the continuation of funding for meeting the expenditure on natural calamities. The Commission recommended that the policy of exemption from the payment of general debt should be based on fund management of concerned states. The 11th Finance Commission, constituted in 1998 under the chairmanship of Sri A.M. Khusro, was asked to submit its proposals on the following agenda of items: on recovery from the budget imbalances, on estimation of the state's plan, non-plan expenditures, on making suitable and appropriate suggestions to fulfill the needs of local self-governments, and steps to be taken to increase the funding to the states. The Commission made following recommendations: the states to be given 28% share from all kinds of income received by the central government. The total allocations made by the central government from its all kinds of income to states in the form of plan, non-plan and others should not exceed 37.5%. The salaries as well as allowances remitted by the states should match to their revenue expenditures. The pay bills should not exceed the specified limitation in the total revenue collections. There is no need to constitute pay revision committee for every 10 years, as the governments are taking necessary steps to enhance the allowances of states, keeping in view the prices hike. The Commission proposed that in coming years, the appointment of pay revision committees should be very limited while maintaining a gap of longer period, keeping in view of state government's paying capacity as well as local conditions. Keeping in view of expenditure on managing the governance and continuing the developmental activities, the government in power should not show enthusiasm in enhancing the salaries of its employees. Proposed for the constitution of a committee with technical experts to evolve a procedure in the payment of pay and allowances of employees. Recommended for the creation of an organization to see that the payment of pensions to employees should not become a burden to state governments. It also recommended for the release of 10,000 crores of rupees to Panchayati Raj institution in coming 5 years. The central government should consult the state governments while appointing and deciding the observing items of agenda of pay revision committees. The 12th Finance Commission headed by C. Rangarajan made the following recommendations. Center and states to improve the combined tax GDP ratio to 17.6% by 2019. Combined debt GDP ratio with extended debt measured at historical exchange rates to be brought down to 75% by 2019. Fiscal deficit to GDP targets for the center and the states to be fixed at 3%. Revenue deficit or the center and the states to be brought down to zero by 2008-9. Interest payments relative to revenue receipts to be brought down to 28% and 15% in the case of center and states respectively. States to follow a recruitment policy in a manner so that the total salary bill relative to revenue expenditure net of interest payments does not exceed 35%. Each state to enact a fiscal responsibility legislation providing for elimination of revenue deficit by 2008-9 and reducing fiscal deficit to 3% of state domestic product. The system of lending to be brought to an end over time. The long-term goal should be to bring down debt GDP ratio to 28% each for the state and the states. The 13th Finance Commission was appointed by the President of India in November 2007 under the chairmanship of Dr. Vijay Kelkar. Some of the major recommendations of the Commission include the following. The share of states in net proceeds of shareable central taxes to be 32% every year for the period of award. Revenue accruing to a state is to be protected to the levels that would have accrued to it had services tax been a part of the shareable central taxes. Center is to review the levy of cesses and surcharges with a view to reducing their share in its gross tax revenue. The indicative ceiling on overall transfers to states on revenue account may be set at 39.5% of gross revenue receipts of the center. The 14th Finance Commission was headed by Dr. Y.V. Reddy, which made the following recommendations. The share of states in the net proceeds of the shareable central taxes to be 42%. This is 10 percentage points higher than the recommendations of the 13th Finance Commission. Revenue deficit to be progressively reduced and eliminated. Fiscal deficit to be reduced to 3% of the GDP by 2017-18. The medium-term fiscal plan to be reformed and made the statement of commitment rather than a statement of intent. Both center and the states should conclude grand bargain to implement the Model Goods and Services Act. Initiatives to reduce the number of centrally sponsored schemes and to restore the predominance of formula-based plan grants. States to address the problem of losses in the power sector in time-bound manner. The Constitution of India envisages the Finance Commission as a balancing wheel of fiscal federalism in India. However, its role in the center-state fiscal relations has been undermined by the emergence of the Planning Commission, a non-constitutional and a non-statutory body. Dr. P.V. Rajmannar, the chairman of the 4th Finance Commission, highlighted the overlapping of functions and responsibilities between the Finance Commission and the Planning Commission in federal fiscal transfers in the following way. It is the setting up of the Planning Commission that has in practice restricted the scope and functions of the Finance Commission. I say in practice because there has been no amendment to the Constitution to confine the functions of the Finance Commission to merely ascertain and cover the revenue gap of each state on a review of the forecast of revenue and expenditure furnished by the state. The reference in Article 275 to grants in aid to the revenues of states is not confined to revenue expenditure only. There is no legal warrant for excluding from the scope of the Finance Commission all capital grants. Even the capital requirements of a state may be properly met by grants in aid under Article 275 made on the recommendations of the Finance Commission. The assistance given by the Centre for planned projects either by way of grants or loans is practically dependent on the recommendations of the Planning Commission. It is obvious that a body like Finance Commission cannot operate in the same field. The main functions of the Finance Commission now consist in determining the revenue gap of each state and providing for filling up the gap by a scheme of devolution, partly by a distribution of taxes and duties and partly by grants in aid. However, with the scrapping the Planning Commission, the overlapping of recommendations between the Planning Commission and Finance Commission would not arise in the future. However, the role of Niti Aayog needs to be understood in the context of distribution of finances between the central and the state governments. Although it has been given the label of a policy assistance body, it is too early as how the relationship between Niti Aayog and Finance Commission would emerge. With the advent of global economy, new economic policy, disinvestment of capital in public sector, diminishing of subsidies and welfare measures, the recommendations of the Finance Commission need to be evaluated. Though the Commission recommends for the development of backward states, there are no specific modifications in it. The recommendations are more or less the same as the previous Finance Commissions. As India is a union of states, there must be good relations between the union and the state governments. This can be achieved through fair distribution of financial resources between the union and the state governments. Eminent jurist Dr. Raj Mannar recommended that Finance Commission should function as a permanent body instead of the one appointed once in 5 years, and also suggested for the widening of its scope.